The unlikely savior. The first time Torrin Reeves saw the stars fall, he was elbow-deep in hydraulic fluid, cursing the ancient mining equipment that kept Outpost Helios operational. The massive drill clamps had seized again, and Command wouldn't authorize replacement parts until the next supply run, 3 months away at best. So he did what he always did, improvised. Torrin wasn't supposed to be here, not really. 9 years ago, he'd signed on for an 18-month contract with Frontier Resource Operations, expecting to save enough credits to open his own repair shop back on Europa Station. But Europa's economy collapsed, FRO doubled his salary to keep him on Helios, and somehow temporary became permanent. Now, at 34, he was the longest-serving crew member on an outpost that normal people rotated off after 2 years. "Damn it," he muttered, yanking the corroded valve free as viscous blue liquid spattered his already stained coveralls. The metallic taste of recycled air filled his lungs, a taste he'd grown so accustomed to that real atmosphere would probably feel wrong now. That's when the first tremor hit. The outpost's warning system wailed once before falling eerily silent. Torrin abandoned his tools and sprinted to the nearest viewport. Outside, through the thick polymer shield, the rust-colored landscape of Petraeus IV trembled. But it wasn't the shaking ground that froze the breath in his chest. It was what descended through the murky atmosphere. It wasn't a meteor or space debris. The object moved too deliberately, adjusting its trajectory in sharp, controlled bursts. Black and iridescent, it resembled no ship design in human records. As it pierced the cloud layer, a trail of silver-blue energy bubbled from its hull. "Control, are you seeing this?" Torrin called into his comm unit. Static answered him. The outpost's communications had gone dark. He watched as the vessel crashed 3 kilometers from the outpost, beyond the eastern ridge that sheltered Helios from the worst of the planet's dust storms. The impact sent a plume of orange soil skyward. Standard protocol was clear. Unknown craft meant potential contamination, hostiles, or worse. Secure the outpost. Wait for armed response. Do not investigate. But Torrin had never been good at protocol. 20 minutes later, he'd suited up in an environment rig, grabbed a repair kit and emergency beacon, and taken the only functioning rover toward the crash site. If questioned later, he'd claim he was checking for structural damage to the eastern sensor array. Not that anyone would believe him. The crashed vessel had carved a half-kilometer trench through the rocky terrain. It wasn't large, maybe twice the size of the rover, with no visible engines or propulsion systems. Its surface was smooth like obsidian, but seemed to shift and ripple even as Torrin approached. Particles of dust refused to settle on it, hovering millimeters from contact. "What the hell are you?" he whispered, circling the wreck. A jagged crack ran along one side of the craft, leaking the same silver-blue substance he'd seen during descent. Up close, it pulsed with an internal rhythm like a heartbeat. Torrin reached out instinctively, then jerked his hand back before making contact. He wasn't that reckless. He nearly missed the opening, a section of hull that had partially retracted, revealing a dark interior. His helmet lamp cut through the gloom as he peered inside, expecting complex machinery, controlled surfaces, or navigation equipment. Instead, he found the pilot. It lay crumpled against what might have been a control interface, though there were no buttons or screens that Torrin could identify. The creature was vaguely humanoid but longer-limbed, with skin that shifted between translucent and opaque, depending on how his light struck it. A fine lattice of crystalline structures ran beneath its surface like veins or circuitry. One appendage, an arm, perhaps, was bent at an unnatural angle, leaking the silver-blue substance onto the deck. Most striking were its wings, 3 sets of delicate, diaphanous structures that reminded Torrin of dragonfly wings crossed with fiber-optic filaments. They lay broken and twisted behind the creature, still occasionally pulsing with weak ribbons of light. The being's eyes opened, 7 of them, arranged in a crescent pattern across what Torrin assumed was its face. They focused on him with unmistakable awareness. "Easy now," Torin said, knowing the creature couldn't understand, but hoping his tone might convey peaceful intent. "I'm not here to harm you." The being made no sound but raised its uninjured limb. A tendril of silver-blue energy snaked from its fingertips, touching Torin's helmet. Instantly, his head filled with impressions. Pain, danger, pursuit, help. He staggered back, gasping at the sudden invasion of alien thought. The creature slumped further, its glow dimming. It was dying. Torin had three options: leave it to die, call in the crash, and face quarantine protocols that would almost certainly end with the alien's dissection, or do something incredibly stupid. Naturally, he chose the third option. Getting the creature into the rover proved difficult. It wasn't heavy, lighter than it should have been given its size, but its body temperature fluctuated wildly, and whenever Torin touched the damaged wings, it would convulse in obvious agony. Eventually, he managed to secure it in the rear compartment, cushioned with emergency blankets. The return journey to Helios was tense. Twice the alien's vital signs, or what Torin assumed were vital signs, faded completely before a pulse of energy would surge through its body, temporarily reviving it. By the time he reached the outpost's maintenance bay, Torin had formulated a loose plan: hide the alien in his personal workshop, tend to its wounds if possible, and figure out the rest later. Fortunately, Helios was understaffed, with most personnel focused on the primary mining operation 2 kilometers north. Torin's maintenance bay was his exclusive domain, and the security cameras had mysteriously malfunctioned months ago after he'd grown tired of supervisors monitoring his work habits. He cleared a space among the spare parts and fabrication equipment, creating a makeshift medical area. The problem was, he had no idea how to heal an alien with biology so foreign that it might as well be made of different physical laws. "Okay," he said to the semi-conscious creature. "Let's start with the basics." Over the next 72 hours, Torin slept in brief snatches, learning through trial and error. The silver-blue fluid wasn't blood, but something closer to a programmable catalyst. When exposed to different materials, it would either dissolve them, bond with them, or reject them entirely. The crystal lattice beneath the creature's skin was both skeleton and nervous system. The wings, while damaged, showed signs of self-repair when exposed to specific electromagnetic frequencies. Torin jury-rigged a regeneration chamber from a particle cleaner and an old ultrasonic welder. He synthesized a nutrient solution that the alien could absorb through its skin, since he could find no evidence of a mouth. Most importantly, he splinted the broken limb and created a support frame for the damaged wings, giving them the stability they needed to heal. Throughout it all, the alien watched him with those 7 eyes, occasionally touching his mind with impressions that grew clearer each time. Gratitude, curiosity, warning. Warning was the one that troubled him. On the 4th day, as Torin was adjusting the electromagnetic field generator, the alien communicated more deliberately than before. Its tendril of energy connected with Torin's temple, and suddenly images flooded his consciousness. Massive ships, hundreds of times larger than the crashed vessel, pursuing the smaller craft through the void between stars. The hunters weren't human, nor were they the same species as his patient. They were something else, angular, mechanical yet organic, implacable. "You're a refugee," Torin realized aloud. You were running from them. The alien's eyes blinked in sequence, which Torin had come to interpret as affirmation. "Do they know you're here? On this planet?" Another image. The alien's desperate attempts to mask its trajectory, to scatter false trails across multiple systems. Uncertainty followed. Maybe they knew. Maybe they didn't. But they would never stop searching. "Well," Torin said with a sigh, "that's a problem for another day. Let's focus on getting you mobile first." Over the following weeks, Torin maintained his regular duties around the outpost while spending every free moment with the alien. He named it Vesa, after his grandmother's stories of star spirits who guided lost travelers. Vesa seemed to accept the designation, responding to it with pulses of blue light across its crystalline lattice. Communication improved gradually. Vesa could project images and emotions with increasing clarity, though complex concepts remained difficult to translate. Torin learned that Vesa's species, which had no name he could pronounce, were essentially harmonic resonators with the universe itself. They perceived reality as interwoven patterns of energy and matter, could manipulate certain physical laws, and lived for centuries, possibly millennia. Torin, in turn, taught Vesa about humans. He showed it schematics, music, art, anything he could access from Helios's limited database. Vesa seemed particularly fascinated by human creativity, by the way people could imagine things that didn't yet exist and then bring them into reality. The healing progressed faster than Torin anticipated. By the second month, Vesa could move around the workshop freely, though it preferred to remain hidden whenever other crew members came by. Its wings had begun to regenerate, the broken filaments reconnecting, though they still couldn't support flight. "What will you do when you're healed?" Torin asked one evening as he made adjustments to the support frame. "You can't stay here forever. Eventually, someone will notice." Vesa's response was a series of images, stars, distant nebulae, a journey far beyond human-explored space. Then, unexpectedly, an image of Torin himself, surrounded by a sense of question. "Me? Go with you?" He laughed softly. "I'm just a mechanic, Vesa. I fix broken machines, not whatever you are." But the question lingered between them, unresolved. The day came sooner than either expected. 3 months after the crash, Torin entered his workshop to find Vesa hovering a meter above the floor, all 3 sets of wings fully extended and pulsing with vibrant light. The sight was breathtaking, like watching a living aurora borealis contained within the form of a sentient being. "You're leaving," Torin said, not a question but a statement. Vesa descended, approaching Torin with unusual deliberation. It extended both upper limbs, now fully healed, and placed them on either side of Torin's head. The mental connection that formed was unlike any they had shared before, crystal clear, almost like spoken language. "Guardian healer friend. Debt cannot be measured. Will be repaid." "No debt," Torin replied, surprised to find his voice thick with emotion. "Just be free. Be safe. Will return. Promise bound in essence. Accept gift." Before Torin could ask what gift, Vesa pressed something into his palm, a small crystal that glowed with the same silver-blue energy as its blood. The moment it touched his skin, Torin felt a jolt of awareness, as if a new sense had awakened. Suddenly, he could perceive the intricate web of energy flowing through the outpost's systems, could feel the subtle vibrations of the planet beneath his feet. Memory. Connection. Call if needed. And then Vesa was moving toward the maintenance bay's outer airlock, its body beginning to shift and change. What had seemed solid became ethereal, the boundaries between Vesa and the air around it blurring until it was more presence than form. Torin wanted to say something profound, something that would capture the significance of what they had shared, but all that came out was, "I'll miss you." Vesa's response wasn't words or even images, just a feeling of profound connection that transcended physical presence. Then it was gone, passing through the station's hull, as if it were no more substantial than fog, rising into the amber sky of Petroia's IV and accelerating until it was just another distant star. The crystal in Torin's hand pulsed once, then settled into a steady, subtle glow. Life at Outpost Helios returned to its routine. Days bowled into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years. Torin kept the crystal with him always, fashioning it into a pendant that he wore beneath his clothes. Sometimes, late at night, he would hold it and feel faint echoes of distant journeys through the void, glimpses of wonders no human had ever witnessed. He told no one about Vesa. Who would believe him? More importantly, who would understand that for a brief moment, he had connected with something greater than himself, greater perhaps than humanity's entire understanding of the universe. 5 years passed. Command finally authorized those replacement parts. New crew members arrived. Old ones departed. Torin remained, fixing what was broken, keeping Helios running while silently watching the stars. The crystal grew quieter with time, its pulses less frequent, until Torin wondered if the connection had faded entirely. Then came the day the skies darkened above every human colony across 7 systems. The day the angular, mechanical yet organic ships appeared in formation, weapons primed. The day humanity realized it was not alone in the universe, and that its first contact would be with something that had no interest in peace. And on that day, in his quiet workshop on a forgotten outpost, Torin Reeves felt the crystal against his chest burn with sudden, urgent heat. Vesa was returning. But this time, it wasn't alone. The Cosmic Reunion. Invasion Day, as it would later be called, began with silence. Across 7 systems and 26 colonies, communications networks failed simultaneously. Quantum relays went dark. Navigation systems reset to 0. Military vessels found themselves suddenly blind, adrift in the void. On Petraeus IV, Torin Reeves stood outside Outpost Helios, watching the sky transform. It began as a subtle darkening at the horizon, like an approaching storm. Then the darkness spread upward, consuming the amber light until the entire atmosphere seemed to vibrate with unnatural energy. The crystal against his chest pulsed in synchrony with the disturbance, growing warmer with each passing moment. "Reeves, get inside." Director Keller's voice crackled through his comm unit, one of the few systems still functioning locally. "We're initiating lockdown protocols." Torin ignored the order. Something was calling to him through the crystal, a familiar presence, but magnified 1,000-fold. Without fully understanding why, he knew he needed to return to the crash site where he'd first found Vesa 5 years earlier. He took the rover without authorization, racing across the rocky terrain as the sky continued to darken. At the ridge, he stopped and stared upward in awe. The invasion fleet had arrived in system, massive ships that blotted out the stars, their hulls composed of geometrically perfect segments that shifted and reconfigured as they moved. They resembled the images Vesa had shown him years ago, but seeing them directly was entirely different. They were beautiful in their terrible precision, and they had come to eradicate humanity. Reports had been filtering in for weeks from the outer colonies. Systematic destruction of outposts, harvest of resources, and surgical strikes against military assets. These weren't conquerors. They were exterminators clearing an infestation before claiming the territory. As Torin watched, smaller craft detached from the motherships, descending toward the planet's surface. They would target strategic locations first: the main mining operation, command centers, power generation facilities. Outpost Helios was inconsequential by comparison, but it wouldn't be spared for long. The crystal burned hot against his skin now, guiding him onward. Torin drove into the impact trench where Vesa's craft had crashed, which had remained remarkably unchanged through years of dust storms and erosion. As he reached its center, the crystal flared with blinding intensity, forcing him to stop the rover. He climbed out, instinctively raising his hand to shield his eyes as a different kind of darkness descended, not the oppressive shadow of invasion, but a swirling vortex of silver-blue energy that cracked the fabric of space itself. The void split open, and through it came Vesa. It wasn't alone. Dozens of beings similar to Vesa emerged from the rift, their crystalline bodies illuminating the darkness with prismatic light. Unlike Vesa during its injured state, these beings moved with fluid grace, their multiple sets of wings fully extended and pulsing with power. But it was Vesa who approached Torin directly, its form larger and more defined than he remembered, its 7 eyes burning with recognition. "You came back," Torin whispered, his voice barely audible against the humming energy. Vesa's mental touch was instantaneous, the connection so much stronger than before. "Guardian healer friend, the Harvester Imperium comes. Your world stands at extinction's edge." Images flooded Torin's mind. The invaders, the harvesters, systematically converting worlds into biomechanical processing nodes across multiple galaxies, each conquered planet becoming part of a vast network that drained energy from reality itself. They were ancient, patient, and utterly without mercy. "Why are you here?" Torin asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Debt, promise, choice." Vessa's companions hovered in formation, their bodies pulsing in complex patterns that Torin somehow understood were a form of high-speed communication. They were debating, analyzing, deciding. "My kind are the Lumini. We observe, we preserve, we rarely intervene. But I argued for exception. Because I helped you. Because you showed compassion without expectation. Because you prove humanitykind's potential. Because together we might balance the equation." One of the other Lumini approached, larger than Vessa, its crystalline lattice more complex, its movements deliberate. It extended a limb toward Torin's temple, requesting permission with a subtle pulse of energy. Torin nodded, and the connection formed. This consciousness was vaster than Vessa's, ancient beyond reckoning. It didn't communicate in words or even simple images, but in intricate conceptual frameworks that restructured Torin's understanding with each passing second. The Lumini were not warriors. They were custodians of universal harmony, maintaining balance between fundamental forces. They had watched the harvesters spread for millennia, intervening only when the cosmic equilibrium itself was threatened. Now the threshold had been reached, but they faced limitations. The harvesters had evolved countermeasures against direct Lumini intervention, energy fields that could inflict irreparable damage to their crystalline forms. To fight effectively, they needed physical anchors in this reality, vessels that could channel their power while protecting their essence. They needed humans. "I told them of your species' adaptability," Vessa continued as the elder Lumini withdrew. "Your capacity to repair what seems destroyed. Your determination to protect what you value. Together, we might create a symbiosis neither Harvester nor Lumini anticipated." "A partnership," Torin said slowly, understanding coalescing. "You want to fight alongside us. More than alongside. Together. Bound. As I was bound to you during healing." The implications stunned Torin. The Lumini were offering humanity a chance, not salvation, but a means to fight back against an enemy that had already calculated their extinction to 16 decimal places, but it would require trust on an unprecedented scale. "The others at the outpost," Torin said. "We need to warn them. Explain what's happening. Time fractures. Harvesters approach. Decision required." The crystal against Torin's chest pulsed once more, projecting an image of the harvester ships deploying ground forces, mechanical constructs with organic components designed to process living matter efficiently. They were already targeting the main mining operation. "Then we fight," Torin said. "But I can't speak for all humanity." "Speak for yourself. Begin with one connection. Others will follow if willing." Vessa extended its limbs, embracing Torin in a field of energy that lifted him from the ground. The other Lumini formed a circle around them, their wings creating a swirling vortex of light. Bond offered freely. Accept or reject. Torin thought of his life before Vessa, the quiet routine of the outpost, the endless repairs, the solitude. He thought of what he'd glimpsed through their connection, the vast wonder of the universe seen through Lumini perception. And he thought of what would happen if the harvesters succeeded, not just the death of humanity, but the systematic harvesting of everything that made Earth and its colonies unique. "I accept," he said. The transformation began instantly. Vessa's form became luminous energy, flowing into and around Torin like liquid light. The crystal medallion shattered, releasing its stored essence. Torin felt his consciousness expanding, his perception shifting until he could sense the flow of energy through the planet beneath his feet, the electromagnetic pulses from the invading ships, the quantum vibrations of reality itself. His body changed too, not grotesquely, but fundamentally. His skin developed a subtle crystalline sheen. His nervous system reconfigured, neurons linking with Vessa's lattice structure to create a hybrid network. Most dramatically, from his back erupted delicate, translucent wings, smaller than Vessa's but growing stronger with each pulse of shared energy. When the process completed, Torin was both himself and something more. "Open the main hub," Torin Vessa called out. "The others are coming. They need to connect to willing hosts." "What others? What have you done to yourself?" Keller demanded. "Saved us all, hopefully," Torin answered as the remaining drones advanced in unison. What followed was unlike any battle in human history. Torin Vessa moved with impossible speed, their perception of time altered by the symbiosis. They could see the flow of energy through the drone systems, could identify weak points in their construction. Each pulse of Lumini power disrupted the Harvester's molecular cohesion, unraveling them from within. But it wasn't just combat. As they fought, Torin Vessa broadcast the truth, everything they knew about the Harvesters, the Lumini, and the bond that might save humanity. They projected these revelations directly into the minds of everyone at the outpost, offering understanding alongside choice. The first to emerge from the hub was Chief Engineer Santos, her eyes wide with wonder rather than fear. "They're real," she whispered. "Everything you showed us, it's real." One by one, others followed. Scientists, technicians, even security personnel. Not everyone. Some remained barricaded, too afraid to accept what they were witnessing. But enough. As the last of the scout drones fell, the sky above the outpost shimmered with approaching Lumini. Their crystalline forms descended like falling stars, each seeking a willing partner in the cosmic dance that was about to begin. Torin Vessa watched as Santos stepped forward, arms outstretched to receive a Lumini whose wings glowed with emerald light. Their bonding was swift, seamless, a testament to her readiness. Others followed. The outpost's physician merged with a Lumini healer, creating a hybrid entity capable of cellular reconstruction. Two security officers bonded with warrior aspect Lumini, their transformations more pronounced, their limbs elongating into graceful weapons. With each successful bonding, the hybrid forces grew stronger. Together, they established a defensive perimeter around Helios as the main Harvester assault approached. They were few, barely 20 bonded pairs, but their power far exceeded their numbers. "We need to warn the other outposts," Santos Emerald said, her transformed body hovering beside Torin Vessa. "The main colony doesn't know what's coming. They will learn." Vessa's thoughts resonated through their shared consciousness. "Others of my kind spread the bond. But this place must be secured first. It has significance beyond strategic value." Torin understood instantly. The crash site, the place where it had all begun. Something about that location was special, a weak point in the fabric between dimensions that the Lumini could utilize. The ground trembled as Harvester processing units approached, massive constructs that towered over the outpost buildings, their segmented bodies bristling with tools designed to render matter down to its component elements. Behind them came the command units, organic brains encased in geometric shells, directing the assault with cold precision. Torin Vessa rose higher, assessing the battlefield. They were outnumbered 100-1, with more Harvesters deploying every minute. But numbers weren't everything. Together, Torin called out to the bonded pairs below. "Join your energies with ours." The hybrid defenders formed a circle, wings extended, hands joined. As one, they channeled their power upward, creating a spiraling column of light that connected to Torin Vessa. The energy built upon itself, growing, intensifying, until Torin felt as if he were holding a star within his transformed body. When he could contain no more, he directed it outward in a wave that expanded in all directions. Where it touched the Harvester units, it didn't simply destroy them. It unraveled the principles by which they operated. Their adaptive shields, designed to counter conventional weapons, and even pure Lumini energy, had no defense against this hybrid power that followed neither human nor Lumini physics, but created something new. The first wave of processors collapsed, their segments crumbling into dust. The command units retreated, calculating new approaches, but the momentum had shifted. Above, the motherships began to reposition, energy weapons charging. They would glass the entire area rather than risk defeat. Now we call the others. Vessa's thoughts surged through their bond. Now we complete what began 5 years ago. Torin Vessa and the other hybrids flew toward the crash site, the surviving outpost personnel following in rovers. As they gathered at the impact trench, the sky above darkened further as the harvester ships moved into position. The bonded pairs formed a larger circle this time, their wings creating overlapping fields of energy. At Torin Vessa's direction, they began to channel power into the ground itself, reactivating the dimensional rift that had briefly formed when the Lumini arrived. The Earth split open, not with destruction but with transformation. The rocky soil crystallized, forming structures that rose toward the sky, towers of living crystal that pulsed with the same silver-blue energy that flowed through the hybrids. From these towers erupted beams of concentrated light, striking the harvester ships with unerring precision. But this wasn't just a weapon. It was a beacon. As the first harvester vessel shattered under the assault, the dimensional rift expanded. Through it came more lumina, hundreds, then thousands, their combined presence forcing the tear in reality wider until it stabilized into a permanent gateway. And through this gateway came ships, not harvester, not human, but lumine vessels constructed of the same crystalline material as their bodies, designed to house and protect those who had not yet bonded with human hosts. The battle for Petreus IV lasted 17 hours. Similar conflicts erupted across human space as the Lumine-Human alliance spread from colony to colony. Not all humans accepted the bond. Not all were compatible. But enough embraced the symbiosis to create a fighting force unlike anything the harvesters had encountered in millennia of conquest. The invaders retreated, their cold calculations disrupted by an unforeseen variable. 2 species, each with their own strengths and weaknesses, combining to create something greater than the sum of their parts. 1 month after Invasion Day, Torin Vessa stood on the command deck of the Lumini flagship, watching as representatives from Earth and its colonies met with the Lumini elders. The alliance had been formalized, with bonded pairs serving as bridges between the 2 civilizations. Humanity had gained access to technologies and understandings that would have taken millennia to develop independently. The Lumini had gained something equally valuable, a new perspective, a renewed capacity for innovation and adaptation. Did you anticipate this outcome when you found me broken in the crash? Vessa's thoughts flowed through their bond, tinged with curiosity. I just wanted to fix what was broken, Torin replied silently. Same as always. You did more than fix. You created possibility where none existed. You transformed ending into beginning. Torin gazed out at the stars, not just with human eyes, but with Lumini perception that revealed the intricate connections between all things. The harvesters had retreated but not surrendered. They would adapt, return, try again. The war was just beginning. But for the first time since the invasion, Torin felt something beyond determination or resolve. He felt hope, not just his own, but Vessa's too, their emotions intertwined like their consciousnesses. Together, they watched as human and Lumine representatives signed the formal alliance treaty. Director Keller, who had eventually accepted a bond with a diplomatic aspect Lumini, nodded respectfully as Torin Vessa approached. The Council has approved your proposal, she said. The Mechanics' Covenant will be established on every human world. Training centers where humans and Lumini can learn to bond effectively. And repair facilities, Torin added, for those who sustain damage in battle. Fitting, Keller replied with the ghost of a smile. You always did prefer fixing things to fighting about them. Torin Vessa extended their wings, the translucent membranes catching the light from distant stars. 5 years ago, a solitary mechanic had found a broken alien and made a simple choice: to help rather than harm, to heal rather than fear. That choice had cascaded through time and space, transforming not just two individuals but two entire civilizations. As they soared away from the flagship, heading toward the permanent rift that now connected Lumini space with human territory, Torin reflected on how fundamentally his life had changed. He was no longer just a man who fixed broken machines on a forgotten outpost. He was part of something vaster than he had ever imagined possible.